Good morning, grade 9s. Hopefully you had a good weekend. We're going to continue with lines. I've got this lesson to do, and then I'm going to post a review that you can get ready for, and then there'll be an assessment at the end of the week, and kind of go from there. All right. You'll also be getting your marks both from March 13th and your updated mark sent to you through your test. So I'm just about done all the tests, and then I'm going to go through and do the marks and the updated stuff. So you'll have all that information this week. So to start, let's get the lesson underway, and here we go. Okay, so the first lesson, or the first section of the lesson is essentially looking at a line. And reminder, the line is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. The x and the y are just points on the Cartesian plane. So the Cartesian plane has an x-axis and a y-axis, and the x and the y in here, so the x and the y, those are just points on the Cartesian plane. The important stuff here is that it's a slope and a y-intercept that are going to help you figure out where this line is. So we're going to go through the examples that are shown and kind of get the answers there. Okay, so the first three are the simplest ones, so we're going to go through them first. And in the first example, we have y equals half x minus 1, where half is the slope, so a rise of 1 and a run of 2. So it's going up to the right. So visually it'd go up to the right, and it's going up by 1 over by 2. And the y-intercept is at -1. So where it crosses the y-axis is at -1, and it's slowly going up to the right. There's the visual. Maybe I'll just do a quick graph of that. So if your Cartesian plane's like that, it starts at -1. So it starts below at -1. It goes up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, and there's your line. And that's how it would look. Second one has a slope of 6 and a y-intercept of -7. So it's starting way down at -7, but it's going up 6 over 1. So there's a slight difference. And then this one is -4/3 x plus 5. That means the negative tells you it's going down to the right. It's going down 4 over 3, down 4 over 3, down 4 over 3. That's the slope. And it's starting at the y-intercept of 5. So it's in the positives up here at 5, and it's going down 4 over 3. Down 4 over 3. So it starts at 5, and it's going a different direction. It's going down to the right instead of up to the right because it's a negative slope. Okay, we got a couple more examples here, and then we're moving on. Okay, a couple more examples here. We have y equals 4 minus 3x. Now, y equals 4 minus 3x is not in the form that we prefer. So we like to see it in y equals mx plus b. And you can see the mx part is second instead of first. So what we can do is just use some simple algebra to rearrange. So that's what we're going to do. Instead of y equals 4 minus 3x, we have a minus 3x. So y equals minus 3x. There's your slope, y equals minus 3x. And you still have your intercept, and that is a positive 4 that goes at the end. So y equals minus 3x plus 4 is the same thing as y equals 4 minus 3x. Exactly the same thing, just some algebra to move them around. And now we have the slope at -3 and the y-intercept at 4. The next one, y equals x minus 7. Y-intercept at -7. That's the easy one. The slope here, it's not written, but how many x's are there? There is 1x. So the slope is 1. We don't write it in, but there is a 1 there. We just don't see it. So be careful of that in the future. And the last one, y equals 12x. Okay, slope of 12, that's the easy one. Y-intercept, there is none, written anyways. So you can assume that there is a plus 0. And the slope is 12, the y-intercept is 0. So that means it starts, at 0, 0 right here at the origin, and it goes up 12 over 1. So very steep. So there you go. There's your last one. Last point, just to remind you, when it goes from 0, 0, that's called direct variation. All the other ones that have a y-intercept, that's called partial variation. Just a reminder. Okay, the second part is order from gentlest, as in the slope's closest to 0, or it's the smallest slope, to the steepest, where the slope's furthest from 0, or it's the greatest slope. So the flattest one we have here is a half x minus 1. That would be our first one. So I'm just going to go and order it. There's our gentlest. Next we have, what's the closest to 0? Looks like this negative slope goes next. Okay, I'm not really interested in it going up or down. I just want to know how steep it is. Whether you're going up the hill or down the hill, it's still a steep hill. Next, we have a -3 and a 1. 1 is gentler, so I'm going with the 1. Then I gotta go with the 3. Six is next. And finally 12, that's the steepest. So they are now ordered from gentlest to the steepest. All right, the next part asks you to describe how to graph. So how to graph the slope y-intercept form. What you do is you start at the y-intercept, you put your dot down, and then you use your slope to count to the right and get your next point. Once you have 2 points, you can draw the line. We're going to use that slope y-intercept graphing technique in the very next question. So bear with me. We'll go through the question, we'll come up with a solution, and I'll show you exactly how a slope y-intercept graph should look. Now, the question is, Andreas is selling toques to help raise money for a homeless shelter in his community. The profit earned on the sale of the toques can be modeled by the equation P equals 14x minus 350, where x represents the number of toques sold. So profit is equal to 14x minus 350, where x is the number of toques, p is the profit, and it starts at a y-intercept of -350. Now, why would it be a negative number? What's happening there? So obviously Andreas had to pay something to make the toques, or to buy the toques and then resell them, whatever. Either way, it cost him money to start his business. So that's the -350. That's the money he started spending at the very beginning. So the question says, state the slope and y-intercept, explain their meaning within the context of the problem. And I've done that now. We've got 350 in the negative. That's the y-intercept. That's how much money he spent to start his business of toque selling. So the other part is the slope, where it's 14x. And the 14 represents how much he's selling each toque. So every time he sells a toque, it goes up $14. That's the profit he makes. So that's the situation there. How many toques do they need to sell in order to break even? That's B. So I'm going to show you. Break even means you make $0. So let's go here. And instead of a P, I'm going to slide in a 0. So 0 equals 14x minus 350. And that's the situation. And we need to come up with a solution. So to isolate x, this is an example that you've done many times. This is actually one of the easier examples that you've done in the previous unit. So you should be well versed at doing this. So add 350. Add 350. 350 equals 14x. Now what do you need to do to get x by itself? Divide by 14. Divide by 14. X equals, and we need a calculator. Well, that didn't go out so well. All right, 350 divided by 14, 25. He needs to sell 25 toques to break even. Okay, in the next part it says Andreas is hoping to raise $5,000 for charity. How many toques would he need to sell in order to meet this goal? So you put 5,000 in. So 5,000 equals 14x minus 350, and you go through the same process. So you add 350 to both sides. Now you get 5,350. Divide by 14 on both sides. X equals got 382.14, so 383. 382.14 or 383 toques. So there's your solution. 383 toques gets him above $5,000.